We are here. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Lopes Goes Last podcast channel. I, of course, am your host, Tyler Lopes. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. Also, hit that bell icon so you never miss any one of my videos. Also, feel free to like and share these videos so you can help this podcast grow. And also, follow me on Twitter at Lopes Goes Last and on Facebook at Lopes Goes Last podcast. Links for those will be down in the description below. So, if you have not seen my video from Tuesday, just a couple of days ago, on the MLB lockout, or rather, more specifically, the new CBA that has been agreed upon between the players and the owners, please go check that out. But if you have not seen it, I did kind of explain what the plan was for this week. So, briefly, if you have not seen it, obviously, Tuesday, I released the video about the new CBA and my thoughts on it. What this video is going to be is about 95% going to be me talking about NFL free agency, all the moves, the signings, the re-signings, the trades, all the things that we saw during the NFL free agency period. I won't be talking about, main profile players that have been released, like, for instance, Cleveland Browns tight end Austin Hooper, Titans wide receiver Julio Jones, guys like that have been released. I'm not going to be getting into that because, quite frankly, if I did get into that, I'd probably be here for 2.5 or 3 hours, and I really do not think anybody wants to do that. I certainly just cannot afford to, fatigue-wise, do that, because also, on Friday, I will be recording and releasing all of the stuff about MLB Free Agency, where I am covering everything that we saw from all the way back in November, all the way up until that present day in free agency. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to cover. So I'm doing, obviously, the video on Tuesday about the new CBA. I'm doing this video today, and I am also doing that video on Friday, so there's already just so much to talk about. If I had, gone into every single big name that was released, it would honestly have just been too much. I hope you guys can understand that. But nonetheless, again, today's video is going to be about NFL free agency, so buckle up because there is a lot to talk about. I'm not going to go over every single move, if it's just like, a guy being signed to the practice squad or something for the Arizona Cardinals, like, okay, cool. But, I'm not going to be going into that. I'm going to be going into most, if not all, of the major moves that have happened over the last few days. I probably will miss a couple, just because that's just kind of how it works. Sometimes, you do all this research, you might miss a thing or two. And if I did, and you somehow get offended because I missed, one of your favorite players getting signed, I do apologize. But if I do catch that I missed somebody, that's pretty important, I will be saying that. I'll be announcing those picks like in the next video or something next week. Obviously, throughout this period, free agency doesn't stop when this video is released. So if there's any other major signings, like for instance, any of the guys that have been released over the last few days that have not signed to a team yet, I will, of course, give you guys updates on those as it goes along in the next videos. But for right now, I'm gonna get into all the crazy stuff that's been going on. It's been a very, very interesting offseason for sure. Starting with a big contract signing that occurred just before free agency really got underway. And that was Aaron Rodgers returning to the Packers. His contract was originally reported at 4 years, $200 million, but that turned out to be false. It was kind of Aaron Rodgers himself sort of refuted that claim, but it ended up being pretty similar. It was actually 3 years, $150. So basically, the annual value was correct in the original report. It just wasn't correct on the length. $50 million annually per year. It makes it the largest contract in annual value in NFL history. It certainly does not equate the largest contract in NFL history. That belongs to one Patrick Mahomes, signed a 13-year, I believe, something like that, whatever it was, $450 million contract, absolutely absurd. But certainly in terms of annual value, the $50 million per year is the largest in NFL history. Rodgers is returning to the Packers, and obviously, that makes sense for the Packers. He's a two-time, he's back-to-back, I should say, MVP now. He's a leader of the team. They want to win another championship while he is still, capable of playing at a very, very high level. He is getting up there in age, so you never really know how many more years of that kind of level of play you have left. But, at the same time, it's I do understand that, Aaron Rodgers has had an issue with winning championships over the last decade or so. So, whether they actually will win a championship with him, who knows? But, it still makes sense for both sides. I don't think there was really a better situation that Aaron Rodgers was going to be able to go to. He's familiar with, that entire front office. He's familiar with the team. He's still got the best wide receiver in the NFL in Davante Adams, although Davante Adams did say that he would not play for the franchise tag, which, spoiler alert, he did get the franchise tag, which I will get into a little bit later. But yeah, I didn't really foresee him going anywhere. There might have been a chance for him to go to Denver with his old offensive coordinator, but once that wasn't an option, obviously going back to the Packers made the most sense, and I think it made the most sense even with that for sure. So I'm just glad that they were able to figure out a deal that makes sense for both sides. Now the Packers have to really deal with their cap situation. That's their main issue now. Next up, sort of related to this one, but more indirectly, the Seattle Seahawks traded former All-Pro quarterback Russell Wilson along with a 4th-round draft pick to the Denver Broncos in exchange for 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick, quarterback Drew Lock, defensive tackle Shelby Harris, and tight end Noah Fant, in what some are calling the biggest trade since the Herschel Walker trade back in 1989, which, is honest. I don't know about that, but it is quite the claim, and I'm sure there's certainly an argument to be made there. But regardless, man, what a trade for both sides. I've seen a lot of people give the Seahawks a bad grade on this one, and I feel like that's just more of a, how do you mess things up with Russell Wilson that bad that he has to be traded, more than the actual package they got for him. So I think that they certainly, both sides certainly walked away feeling really good about themselves. The Broncos went absolutely all in. A lot of people, including myself, felt that the Denver Broncos were one good quarterback away from really starting to compete in the AFC West, and now they have a chance to prove that because they have an absolute top-tier, top-shelf quarterback on their team now. Obviously, as I said, Wilson's one of the best QBs in the game, and he has been over the last decade. He's a 9-time Pro Bowler, former second-team All-Pro. He's been to the Pro Bowl every single year except for 1 year since he has gotten into the NFL, including his rookie season. And also, he is a Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner in 2020. So obviously, he's a great human being as well. He's very, very smart. His business ventures have been very, very public because he... one of the things that I remember about Russell Wilson from when he first came into the league was he had since he was a 3rd-round pick, he had a contract of like $500,000. He wasn't really making a ton of money by comparison to other big starting quarterbacks, but he was already a multi-millionaire at that point. 1, because of sponsorships, and 2, because he was able to invest his money so wisely and have such a sound business strategy that he was able to really multiply and grow that money much, much faster than, maybe somebody like me or somebody, just an average person with average amounts of knowledge would have been able to. So, obviously, great football player, great human being, very, very smart. So, certainly, the Broncos, I'd say it's very hard for them to do much better in terms of bringing in a quarterback than Russell Wilson. You really can't get much better than that as an entire package. And he's joining a team with an absolutely fantastic defense. And also a really nice young offense, even without tight end Noah Fant, who's fantastic. But even without tight end Noah Fant, that really is a fantastic young offense. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, all really nice young wide receivers that Russell Wilson will be able to help develop and kind of teach those guys, a lot about the passing game. And also really young stud running back Javonte Williams. So certainly a pretty good offense to already jump into. Again, not the best offensive line in the world, but still pretty good. And then also, now my favorite tight end coming out of the 2020 draft out of Missouri, Albert Okwuegbunam, will finally get a chance to really show his stuff and show that what he's capable of. He was a 4th-round pick in the 2020 draft, and the Patriots had 2 3rd-round picks in that draft and took 2 tight ends, and neither of them were named Albert Okwuegbunam, and it still breaks my heart to this day. I'll never get over it. Excuse me. But no, in all seriousness, I still think he's going to be great for them. He had a pretty solid year last year, despite being the backup to, again, one of the best young tight ends in football in Noah Fant. Certainly, if he stays healthy, I think that he will really round out that offense and be a nice security blanket for Russell Wilson. So again, all around great situation there in Denver. And then obviously for Seattle, this is just a fantastic package for Russell Wilson. I mean, you can't really ask for much better than that. 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders. So you have 4 really, really high picks over the next 2 years. And obviously, a decent young pass rusher in Shelby Harris. He hasn't really developed as well as I think the Broncos would have liked. He hasn't really showed a lot in the run game, but he is a good pass rusher, a good interior pass rusher when given the chance. And also, again, phenomenal young tight end in Noah Fant. So certainly, whoever the quarterback ends up being in Seattle, whether that's Drew Lock, whether it's somebody that they draft, whether it's somebody that they trade for or sign in free agency, whatever the case may be, they're going to already have a really nice security blanket and a really nice young tight end to go to. And also, of course, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett still there. So certainly, whatever quarterback goes there is certainly not going to have nothing to work with, which is certainly great for them. So they also have the 9th pick in the draft now, which means Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett will probably be available at that point. They might not be, but you never really know. So I assume that at least one of them will be in play at 9. But again, you never really know. So certainly, right now, Drew Lock is projected to be the starting quarterback, who they also got in this trade. He's not really necessarily that great, but he certainly could be like a 1-year fill-in while they figure out their future at quarterback there in Seattle. And they also, of course, clear out a lot of cap space that Russell Wilson was taking up with his contracts. And they got another young piece on defense in Shelby Harris. And I'm sure that that cap space is probably going to be used to really shore up that offensive line in free agency and in the draft and everything like that. So certainly, I think both teams, again, got exactly what they needed here. So, good for them. I'm really excited to see the AFC West this year. I mean, that division is going to be just a slugfest all year long. I mean, just think about it, right? You've got, Justin Herbert and the up-and-coming Chargers, who made a lot of moves in free agency. They're looking a lot better, too, and we'll get into that. Obviously, the Raiders made the playoffs last year. They were one of the teams that made the playoffs, so certainly they're no slouches. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs are possibly the best team in football on paper, definitely at least top 2 or 3, and then, of course, the Broncos now just traded for Russell Wilson. So, I mean, even just the quarterbacks in that division, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, and obviously Derek Carr for the Raiders. Wow. I mean, what a division that's going to be. And, I said this a few weeks ago, and I'll say it again. Sorry to all my Raiders fans watching, but you're not making the playoffs this year. You have now gone from the second best team in your division to the, no doubt, worst. Sorry. I mean, that's just the way it was. I mean, the Broncos and the Chargers just shot right past you. It happens. So, no hard feelings, I hope, but man, what a division that's going to be. Next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts trading quarterback Carson Wentz along with a 2nd-round pick and a 7th-round pick to the Washington Commanders for a package including a 2nd-round pick, 2 3rd-round picks as well. And that 2nd-round pick will effectively act as a pick swap, as the Colts are going to receive the 42nd pick and the Commanders are going to receive the 47th. So the Commanders moving back 5 spots as well. So that's pretty much what it was. So the Commanders, evidently, the story came out that they scoured the earth, essentially, for a quarterback. They called, apparently, every team regarding a quarterback. Now, I don't know about you guys, but, every team? Like, you called the Patriots to ask if they would trade Mac Jones and only Mac Jones because he's literally, until 2 days ago, the only quarterback on the roster? You called the Jacksonville Jaguars? Trevor Lawrence is the only real, I mean, I don't know who their backup is, but Really? You called every team? Whatever, not the point. But, they apparently scoured the earth, and the best they could get was Carson Wentz, which I feel terrible for the Commanders, because the best they could get is a below-average quarterback that costs $28 million. So I do feel bad about that. I really had high hopes for Carson Wentz in Indy, and I loved him coming out of North Dakota State in the draft, and he really showed a lot of potential early, but something, I don't know, man. Maybe it was injuries, maybe it was Jalen Hurts coming in, getting drafted in the second round and him feeling like he was going to get replaced. There's something going on with Carson Wentz. He still has a lot of arm talent, but man, I don't know. He's not the same guy that he was coming into the NFL. I don't know what's going on there. And Colts traded for him. Those picks went completely to waste. The one season that he had, quite frankly, he was the reason why they didn't make the playoffs. It wasn't the defense. It wasn't the offensive line. It wasn't the running game. What do you have left? Your quarterback. So, he didn't have the greatest weapons around him, I guess, but I don't know. I think that Carson Wentz obviously played a huge part in not making the playoffs last year. It wasn't the only reason, but, he played a huge part. And again, he cost $30 million to be pretty bad at playing quarterback. The Commanders, the Commanders, they really gave up a lot for a guy that really hasn't proved that he can play consistently good at the NFL level over the last few years. Like, he really just hasn't proved that. But you know what? If he can just go in and kind of be just a game manager and not completely screw everything up, I think that it might be fine, because the Commanders actually have a decent team right now on paper. They don't have the best team, but obviously, even if he's not the best and they are still pretty bad, they'll probably still have a high draft pick next year, and they might be able to at least trade up, have a chance to get a Bryce Young, have a chance to get a C.J. Stroud coming into the draft next year, where the quarterbacks, at least at the top, are a little bit better than what they have this year. Maybe Jameis Winston can fill it in for the Colts. I don't know. I don't really know what the Colts do at this point. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo goes to the Colts. I really just have no idea what they do at this point. But I think they're a really good team. They still need some weapons, and they still need a quarterback, but we'll see where they go from here. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys. They have traded wide receiver Amari Cooper to the Cleveland Browns in exchange for a 5th and a 6th round draft pick. So it was reported early in the week that the Cowboys were expected to release Amari Cooper because he had a huge cap hit. It was somewhere in the $16 million to $20 million range, and I guess they just felt that he wasn't worth it. So they were expected to release him, but they then said that they were going to try and trade him before they did that. And obviously the Cleveland Browns were not willing to let Amari Cooper go to free agency. They felt like they would rather, take that huge cap hit and give up some draft capital to 100% guarantee that they are going to get Amari Cooper for at least this next upcoming season, which, I mean, fair play to them. They do need some weapons, and Cooper's a good one. He is an absolute bona fide, granted, maybe albeit a little bit inconsistent, but he is still a number one guy for sure. I'm not sure this totally takes them out of the wide receiver market in the draft. I think if they stick at 18, there's going to be a lot of people that are great at every position available at that point. Or maybe not 18, 16, something like that. Whatever their draft pick is. At whatever point it is, sorry, there's still going to be plenty of options available. 13, I don't know. Whatever. You guys will know what I'm talking about. I wouldn't be surprised if they go for somebody like a Devontae Wyatt or Jordan Davis, really shore up that defensive line. But I'm sure that they, if there's a lot of great wide receivers still available at that point, I wouldn't be surprised if they still went for one. They certainly need more. So we'll see how that shakes out for the Browns. And for the Cowboys, I'm not really sure what to think about this. I thought it was a reasonable move to try and, get rid of some cap space. But I think really you needed to not re-sign Michael Gallup, which, spoiler, they did re-sign Michael Gallup. So it Michael Gallup is not as good as Amari Cooper, but he's being paid almost as much as Amari Cooper, so I don't really know what the point was. So, I don't know, maybe there's something I'm missing, but nonetheless, I'm not really sure what they were trying to accomplish there, but that's what happened. Next up, the LA Chargers. They traded a second-round pick and a sixth-round pick. That sixth-round pick is in 2023 to the Chicago Bears for absolute stud pass rusher Khalil Mack. Man, the Chargers are building something special right now, and I mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to get into it even more later on. They were very active in free agency, but, Mack is a stud, no two ways about it. He's a little bit past his prime at this point. He's had some injury concerns, but you know what? When Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are healthy, and they are on opposite sides of that defensive line, good luck every quarterback that they have to play. That is going to be ferocious, especially if they end up drafting like a Devontae Wyatt or a Jordan Davis in that defensive line, or somebody, even like a Boye Mafe, although I think that'd probably be a little too early for him to go, but, another really stud pass rusher, like just somebody like that, that's just going to be a monster, So, yeah, and forgive me for looking over here. I do have my phone here, because I don't want to miss anything that has happened. So if there is anything by the end of the time that I'm talking about the free agency stuff, and there's more stuff going on, I will let you guys know. So just letting you know that that's why I continue to look over here every once in a while, make sure I'm not missing anything. But okay, so on to some of the moves from the free agency period, and I will let you know. I am not going to go very deep into all of these because there are a lot of them. I didn't count them, but I'm guessing there's probably 35, 40, maybe more. I just cannot deep dive into all of these. I'm going to give a little bit of thoughts on every single one of them, but I'm not going to give, what I had just done over the previous few. I'm not going to do that for every single pick. I'm not even going to do that for not for every single pick, but for every single move. And I'm probably not going to do that for any of them except for maybe a couple that are really, really huge. But I am, again, going to give a little bit of thoughts. So, yeah, let's dive in. One of the two teams that stood out to me was the Jacksonville Jaguars, especially early in the free agency period. First day, they stood out huge because they really just kind of blew it up. And really tried to sign a whole bunch of people. So they signed guard Brandon Scherff, and I do not know how much they signed him for or the years off the top of my head. Let me see if I can find that real quick, because at the time that I wrote this, his contract details had not come out yet, but it does seem like they have brought it out now. It is a 3-year, $49.5 million deal, so that's a huge deal for him. And then they also signed wide receiver Christian Kirk for 4 years and $72 million. And they signed wide receiver Zay Jones for 3 years, $24 million. They signed linebacker Foyesade Oluokun for 3 years, $45 million. And they signed tight end Evan Ingram for 1 year and $9 million, all on the first day. Oh, thank goodness someone is doing something to change that culture out there in Jacksonville. They are really doing something, and good for them. And let me tell you, I love Foyesade Oluokun. I think the Pats, I really wish the Patriots would have been able to sign him, although he's probably a little bit out of their price range. I think he's really underrated. But apparently he got paid like a bona fide number one linebacker, so good for him. So obviously the Jaguars saw in him what I did. Brandon Scherff obviously gives the offensive line a much-needed boost. Obviously in the draft, I've been, and most people have been predicting the Jaguars to take either Evan Neal, tackle out of Alabama, or Ike Mekwonu out of NC State. Another tackle, possibly he could play guard as well. Whoever the case may be, they're probably going to take offensive line. But obviously, with Brandon Scherff, now it's not as big a need, although I still think it is, even though you did franchise tag Cam Robinson, which I will get into in a little bit. But yeah, so certainly Just a lot of stuff, a lot of great players that the Jaguars signed. So good all around, and thank goodness for Trevor Lawrence. He's getting some great weapons in Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. A much more improved offense than they had last year. So next up, the LA Chargers. Here we go. They signed cornerback J.C. Jackson to a 5-year, $82 million contract with $40 million guaranteed. A lot of money for J.C. Jackson. I love J.C. Jackson, obviously, as a Patriots fan. He's a fantastic player. I think he's a top 10 DB in the league. Probably the best free agent available, other than maybe a Teron Armstead, who is not actually signed as of right now. But nonetheless, J.C. Jackson, fantastic player. I'm sad to see him go, but clearly the Patriots were not willing to pay him that much money, or maybe just couldn't pay him that much money. So obviously he is gone. He's one of the best ball hawkers in the NFL. He's got a crazy amount of interceptions every year. So, good for him. And he really proved to be a number one lockdown corner this year. So good for him. Get out of the super cold weather, go somewhere warm like LA, and really just make a difference in that Chargers organization, because he will. And they needed a shutdown corner like him, and they got one for sure. And also, the Los Angeles Chargers re-signed wide receiver Mike Williams to a 3-year, $60 million contract extension. Pretty good player. Probably not worth the $20 million a year, but, familiarity really matters in the NFL. He's familiar with the system, familiar with the city, familiar with the quarterback. So they're probably willing to overpay a little bit to keep him around. So it does make sense to keep him. Not really much else to say about that, so good on the Chargers. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals signed a pair of offensive linemen. Finally, it happened. There's offensive linemen that don't stink in Cincinnati, yes. So they signed a couple offensive linemen in guard Alex Kappa and interior offensive lineman Ted Karras. Kappa to a 4-year, $35 million deal, and Karras to a 3-year, $18 million deal. It happened, guys. They finally brought in some good offensive linemen. Another former Patriot. I feel like it's just kind of, they're all leaving. In Ted Karras, he's fantastic offensive lineman. Good for them. Good for him. He finally got a big payday. It's a start, certainly, but they still need more. Obviously, you can have 2 good offensive linemen, but if you got 3 bad ones, it's only going to make a moderate amount of difference. And they also still need some help on defense as well. But it's a great start, for sure. So good for the Bengals. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers signed quarterback Mitch Trubisky to a 2-year, $14.2 million contract. I don't hate this move. I will hate it if they don't draft a quarterback in the first round, or if they don't draft, a Carson Strong in the second round or something like that. To be fair, or to be honest, I will hate this move if they don't just figure out the future at quarterback, and if they genuinely think that Mitch Trubisky is going to be the future, because $7 million is fine for a backup, but, to me, under no circumstances should Mitch Trubisky be starting under center for the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 1 next year. He is one of my least favorite players in the NFL to watch. He drives me absolutely bonkers every time he touches a football, because there are times where he makes absolute pinpoint accuracy throws 40 yards down the field in triple coverage, and then times where he throws the ball where there is no receiver and no even route concept on the field, where there's nothing but 5 defenders just standing there. Like, you just never know what you're going to get with him, and it drives me nuts. But, he still does have some upside. He's definitely not the worst quarterback in the league, and he wasn't the worst quarterback in the league when he was in Chicago. He was up there, but he wasn't the worst, absolute worst. So you could have somebody that's not as good. I guess it makes sense to have a backup plan if everything goes wrong, or if, guys don't fall to you in the draft. You have somebody that has somewhat of a future in the NFL, so I guess I understand it. Another QB changed teams as Teddy Bridgewater signed with the Miami Dolphins for $6.5 million for this upcoming season. I feel bad for Teddy. I really do. I think that honestly, he should have been the one that was signed by Pittsburgh, and he should have been the one that maybe is going to be starting this year for the Pittsburgh Steelers instead of Mitch Trubisky. Because I think Teddy Bridgewater still has what it takes to be a good starting quarterback in the NFL. He's not going to be a guy that's going to throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he's not going to be the guy that throws a bunch of interceptions that costs the game either. He's a really good game manager, and obviously guys like that don't succeed much in the NFL these days, but I do think that somebody should give him a chance. But, Miami's a good place for him. I think Tua has a lot of injury history, so it's possible that Teddy's going to get some playing time this year. And quite honestly, between you and me, I don't know if Tua's going to last the year. Sorry, I don't see that much potential in him anymore. I saw it coming out of the draft, but anybody who watched Tua over the last couple of years will probably tell you that he really struggles throwing the ball moderately deep. Like, I watched a game, the game that they actually beat the Patriots the last week of the year, second to last week, whatever it was. He couldn't throw a 15-yard out route. I mean, he was bouncing the ball to his receivers on like 10, 15-yard out routes. Like, more than once. Like, he just has a hard time slinging it. And a quarterback that can't sling it, I mean, a guy like Jalen Waddle runs a 4.3, and he had 100 catches last year for like 1,050 yards or something like that. He had no down the field presence because Tua couldn't get it to him. So, I don't know. I think Teddy has a chance to start. Tua hasn't really played all that well when he's healthy. Never mind when he's injured. So, we'll see what happens there. Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles signing offensive. That's not a word. Outside linebacker / edge rusher Hassan Reddick to a 3-year, $45 million contract. Great signing. They needed help on the edge. They needed help with that pass rush. And with 3 first-round picks this upcoming draft, I think we all kind of anticipated them to address that, and they still can, obviously. But now, if they don't want to, if they feel like they're all set with Hassan Reddick, they can certainly look to address other areas on the team. Like offensive line, linebacker, safety / corner, and then maybe quarterback? I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. Next up, we have the 49ers signing defensive back Charvarius Ward to a 3-year, $42 million contract. Excuse me. The 49ers, they finally got some help in that secondary. Their defense was fantastic last year, and really just were held back a little bit by their secondary, which wasn't all that great. Their front 7 really carried them, and so now they're finally getting some reinforcements back there. The Chiefs, they get significantly worse in an already depleted secondary, and they still have a chance to lose Tyrann Mathieu, which I'll get into in a little bit. The Chiefs did bring in some reinforcements, but I think they really are going to lose Tyrann Mathieu now. But for the 49ers, again, big signing for them. To be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of Charvarius Ward. I think that he's a little bit overrated. I think that he's good. He's good. He's good, but I just don't think he's that bona fide number 1 that people expect him to be. He is still young. I think he's only 26, so he can still develop for sure. He still has upside, but he's been exposed in coverage at times. He doesn't have balls. He doesn't have any kind of ball skill. In 5 years, he has 4 interceptions. And he's been really exposed in coverage again. As I said, his year-to-year consistency has really not been there. It's lacking a little bit. And plus, there's injury concerns on top of all of that. So I'm not sure how much I buy into Charvarius Ward being that lockdown number 1. But certainly the 49ers, they get a guy who can definitely develop into maybe being a number 1 if he stays healthy and he, adapts part of his game. But right now, I think it's probably a bit of an overpay unless he proves... unless he kind of does what Stephon Gilmore did. The Patriots definitely overpaid for Stephon Gilmore, and he ended up developing into one of the best cover guys in the NFL. So unless there's some kind of, unless it's a scheme type thing, or he just completely explodes into being one of the best DBs in the NFL. I think this is a bit of an overpay. But the Jets were pretty active also during free agency. They signed offensive lineman Laken Tomlinson to a 3-year, $40 million deal, and tight end CJ Uzomah to a 3-year, $24 million deal as well. Tomlinson definitely gives that offensive line a big boost, and it opens the door for opportunities for the Jets to go in maybe a different direction than offensive line in the draft this year. I think that, having the amount of decent offensive linemen that they've obviously spent a few high draft picks on offensive linemen the last few years, and now obviously signing Laken Tomlinson. I think you might be able to spare your first round picks at this point. I don't think you need to go offensive line again now. You still can, obviously, and really just get it all down, because there's still some areas that you could probably improve on that line. But I think you definitely at least open the door for more possibility for you to go in different directions. I personally think Kyle Hamilton's a great fit for them right now, even though they did sign a safety in free agency, which I'll get to in a minute. But nonetheless, I love Laken Tomlinson. He'll really help solidify that. I do also love CJ Uzomah. I've talked about him a couple times on the podcast. I thought he would really take a step up this year, and he did. He was a big security blanket for Joe Burrow. You saw how much of a difference he made in the playoffs for them. A lot of third downs. He was making the big catches. He was a guy that really made a big difference for that team, and I think they'll really miss him now that he's gone. I expect him to be that similar kind of security blanket for Zach Wilson as he develops. The Denver Broncos making more moves other than trading for Russell Wilson, as they signed defensive tackle DJ Jones to a 3-year, $30 million contract. You're forgiven if you weren't really familiar with him. He was on a very crowded and also very, very star-studded 49er defensive line, so certainly you'd be forgiven if you were not really aware of him before, but he's a big run-stuffing nose tackle, and he's really going to help solidify that Broncos defense up front that was not good against the run last year. He'll really help in that regard. The Miami Dolphins signed center Connor Williams to a 2-year, $14 million contract. The former Cowboy, Connor Williams, he was probably the weak link on that offensive line, but the Dolphins need offensive line help, especially on the interior, and so, get a guy in there. He's still pretty young. I think he's only 25, 26, whatever he is. You could definitely do worse than Connor Williams. I'll put it that way. Another offensive lineman switching teams, as the Carolina Panthers, signed guard Austin Corbett to a 3-year, $26 million deal. Good young up-and-comer is Corbett. So the Panthers are another team that certainly could use some help up front on that offensive line, and so this makes perfect sense for them, especially a guy who, again, is only 26 years old in Austin Corbett. He can definitely develop. The Buffalo Bills, they beefed up their offensive line as well with the addition of guard Roger Saffold, who is a former Pro Bowler cut by the Tennessee Titans during the offseason, and whose deal details I simply just could not find. I don't know where it is. Let me see if I can find that. I was able to find Brandon Scherf, so let me see if they have updated Roger Saffold's contract. And no, they have not. So, who knows how much he's making? They did sign him, however. So good for them. Another really great pickup for the Bills. They need to beef up that interior offensive line. Roger Saffold, perfect fit for them. Next signing is a fun one. So the Dallas Cowboys, they re-signed defensive end / pass rushing edge Randy Gregory for 5 years and $70 million. But then, at the 23rd hour, Randy Gregory pulled a DeAndre Jordan and said, "Nah, son, I'm out." And he went and signed the exact same contract, or at least in terms of just the numbers, right? It's probably not the exact same contract, but very similar contract with the Denver Broncos for 5 years, $70 million. So he went from the Cowboys, re-signed with them, but then said, "Yeah, I'm good," changed his mind, and went and signed with the Denver Broncos. And this is a strange one, but what a literal steal for the Broncos. I'm sorry, it's a terrible pun. But, not in terms of the player necessarily is he a steal in the contract, because quite honestly, that's I think a massive overpay. Randy Gregory has potential, but he is not consistent enough to me to be making, $15 million a year, almost. So, I think it's an overpay, but you know what? They got a pretty good pass rusher opposite Bradley Chubb, which they've needed for a while, so, good on them, I suppose. They could do much worse for sure, but I still think it was a bit of an overpay. Next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers signed wide receiver Russell Gage to a 3-year, $30 million contract. So, Russell Gage was pretty much the only weapon not named Kyle Pitts left on the Atlanta Falcons after Calvin Ridley's suspension. Cordero Patterson also hitting free agency as well. And, now the Falcons, they have nothing left on offense, again, other than Kyle Pitts, who is great, admittedly, but, they don't really have much. They don't really have much of a running game. They don't really have offensive line. Who knows what their quarterback situation is going to be next year, if Matt Ryan's going to stick around, if he's going to get traded, if he's going to get cut. Who knows? Sorry, Atlanta. Let's just hope you can get some good weapons in the draft. This upcoming draft. So now the Kansas City Chiefs, they signed safety Justin Reed to a 3-year, $31.5 million contract. I love Justin Reed. I think he's criminally underrated because he plays for, the Texans, who are poo. But, this could definitely signal the end of Tyrann Mathieu's time in Kansas City. I alluded to it earlier. It's not looking like he's going to be back there. He was probably priced out of Kansas City anyway, but obviously now there's real writing on the wall. His replacement's there now, or at least, presumably. And that's quite sad. I loved Tyrann Mathieu for the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought he was really a perfect fit for that franchise, for that culture, for that team, and that scheme in that defense. And, he was really one of the only bright spots in an otherwise pretty bad Kansas City Chiefs defense last year. But obviously, that is probably no longer to be. Also, in terms of safeties, the Ravens signed safety Marcus Williams to a 5-year, $70 million contract. Huge signing, huge and great signing for them. Marcus Williams, he's unfortunately most remembered for being the guy that completely whiffed on the tackle of Stephon Diggs during the Minneapolis Miracle in the playoffs a few years ago. But, he genuinely has developed into one of the best young safeties in football. You might not necessarily hear much about him because the Saints haven't been super great over the last couple of years. He's still only 25 years old, still plenty of time to develop. And the Ravens, if you want to be a great safety, go to the Ravens. They have had a great track record with safeties. Obviously, most, one that sticks out the most is probably going to be Ed Reed, but they also have had Eric Weddle back there and a few other guys. So certainly they have done really well at safety over the last few years. So that's a great place for him to really go. And the Ravens did need some help in that secondary, and so I think it's a great signing all around for them. Next up, we have the New York Football Giants signing quarterback Tyrod Taylor to a 2-year, $17 million deal. I think he has a legit chance to start next year, as weird as that may sound. If anything, just because Daniel Jones is the ball's worst. So I just don't like Daniel Jones, and I don't think Tyrod Taylor gets the credit he deserves. He's a lot like Teddy Bridgewater in that way. I think that when he plays, when he starts, he's actually pretty decent. He's not going to be that guy that throws for 350 yards. He's not going to be that guy that throws for 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, touchdowns. But he's a guy that is a solid player. You know what you're going to get out of him each and every day. And I think that, quite frankly, that is the polar opposite of Daniel Jones. You could get a 400 yards, 5 touchdown performance, or you could get a 13-yard and negative 19 touchdown performance from Daniel Jones. You just literally never know what you're going to get from him on a daily basis. And, sure, health is always a concern with Tyrod Taylor. That's one of the main reasons why he hasn't been a consistent starter, is because injuries have really plagued him, especially over the last few years since he left Cleveland. But if anything, at least he gives them an upgrade at backup from Mike Glennon. in case Daniel Jones gets injured again. So yeah, a good signing for them. The Raiders with a couple more big moves. They signed edge rusher Chandler Jones to a contract that's worth around $17 million per year. This is one of those that just came out about an hour or so ago by the time I'm recording this. And they also have traded defensive end pass rusher Yannick Ngakoue to the Indianapolis Colts for a package including defensive back Rock Yassin. Jones will definitely give that pass rush a boost out there in Vegas, opposite Max Crosby, who signed a huge extension this offseason with the Raiders as well. So certainly just a great pairing that they're going to have there. Chandler Jones doesn't kind of have to do it all by himself. He doesn't have to drop back into coverage very often, so I think that really is a good fit for him. And also Rock Yassin, another really good young corner for them. Not a world beater or anything like that. Not going to really shift the needle like crazy, but still a good young defensive back there. So nice pickup there. And also, I think Ngakoue is probably going to be a little bit more effective in the Colts scheme than he was in the Raiders scheme. I just think that he didn't really fit that culture, fit that scheme the way that Jones is going to, and the way that I think he'll fit nicely in Indianapolis. Also, the Saints, in a move that is no doubt them trying to replace the loss of Marcus Williams, signed another Marcus at safety, Marcus May, for 3 years and $28.5 million. I almost said $285 million. That's way too much. That's not it. $28.5 million. Fair move, I think, for the Saints. May and Marcus Williams are pretty similar in terms of, their production, in terms of just how well they have played over the last few years. But May, I don't think he's gotten to show how productive he can be and how talented he is because he plays for the Jets, or he played, past tense, for the Jets. So, obviously, their secondary is atrocious. He's the only one with any remote talent out there on the Jets at that point. And, there are also injury concerns, so I can understand the lower price tag as compared to a Marcus Williams, or as compared to what I'm sure Tyrann Mathieu will get, although he is a little bit older, so, maybe not. But, nonetheless, for now, the Jets, they have legit no one of any relevance in their secondary. Kyle Hamilton's going to probably have to be your pick here soon. Although I do think the Jets did sign a safety over the last couple of days, although I don't see if it is written down here. However, I might have already said it. I don't really remember, but nonetheless, here it is. It's coming up here in a minute. So, yes, they did sign a safety, so they do have somebody back there. So, the Jets did sign Jordan Whitehead away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a 2-year, $14.5 million contract. Not nearly as good as Marcus May, not nearly as good as Marcus Williams, not nearly as good as Tyrann Mathieu, not as good as Justin Reed, probably the bottom of not the bottom of the barrel. That's not what I mean. I don't mean like that. But in terms of the available starting caliber safeties on the market, I think that he's down near the bottom. He's very young still. He certainly can develop. I still think you need Kyle Hamilton. And also the Jets signed cornerback DJ Reed to a 3-year, $33 million deal. Gonna be honest with you guys, I think that it's a bit of an overpay for DJ Reed. I think the reason why that they overpaid DJ Reed so much is because he has played for Robert Saleh, the head coach of the Jets, before, back when he was defense coordinator for the 49ers. So I think they probably brought him in because they feel he's much more familiar with the scheme and will be able to be consistent for them. They just need bodies back there, honestly, the Jets. So, not terrible, I guess. If you got the money, you might as well spend it. The Baltimore Ravens, another move for them. They signed offensive tackle, Morgan Moses to a 3-year, $15 million deal. He's one of the better tackles in the NFL, and no one cares, apparently. I mean, it seems like no one has watched this man play. He's just been very, very consistent for a number of years, and I think this is an absolute steal for the Baltimore Ravens. I think that $5 million per year for him is going to be great, and he's really going to help them out. The Vikings signed linebacker Jordan Hicks to a 2-year, $10 million contract, and he was the odd man out in Arizona. You know, they drafted Isaiah Simmons, they drafted Zaven Collins, both at Jordan Hicks' position, or at least, you know, pretty similar to Jordan Hicks. So he was the odd man out. Still a good player, certainly. The Vikings definitely need linebacker help with Eric Kendricks getting up there in age and also not really having anybody behind Eric Kendricks to play if Eric Kendricks gets hurt or if his play starts to drop off. So I think it's a good signing for them. Jaguars, another signing cornerback Darius Williams to a 3-year, $39 million contract. Gotta be honest, I don't really know much about Williams. But the Jaguars, quite frankly, need all the help they can get, and they are just shilling out money. They are just throwing it out there. So good for them. The Steelers, they signed guard James Daniels, to a 3-year, $26.5 million contract. And he's one of the youngest guards and youngest players overall in free agency. He's only 24 years old, which you don't see a lot of 24-year-olds hitting free agency. So, you know, the Steelers, they need major help on the offensive line, as I've discussed in prior videos. So certainly he's a guy that they can really build around for a number of years because he is so young. You know, he's not going to drop off like somebody, you know, like maybe a Teron Armstead would. I'm not saying he definitely will, but he's 31. It's much more likely that he would drop off than somebody who's 24 years old. Not saying that it's impossible for it to be the other way around, but I'm just saying it's less likely for the 24-year-old to just completely fall off the face of the earth than a 31-year-old. As their body ages, they might start to lose things physically that they had before. So, next up we have the Ravens signing, again, just kind of going back and forth with the Ravens. The Ravens have been very, very active. They are signing outside linebacker Za'Darius Smith to a 4-year, $35 million contract. And, you know, honestly, I didn't realize the Ravens had this much cap space. I mean, that's what's kind of standing out to me at this point. They have signed so many guys for so much money, and I just did not realize that a team that, quite frankly, if Lamar Jackson stays healthy, would probably, I mean, we were talking about them maybe winning the Super Bowl at one point. They were really, really good halfway through the year before, you know, COVID started hitting and injuries, inconsistency, just a whole mess. You know, I think they're going to be really good, and plus, you know, they're getting their starting running back this year, whose name is completely escaping me. J.K. Dobbins, there it is. So they're getting J.K. Dobbins back this year. He was out all last year with injury. Sorry for the brain fart there. But, yeah, I think that they really are putting together some pieces on that defense now, too. And getting that offensive line together, getting that defense together. You got your running back coming back. I think they're going to be a force in the AFC North. Watch out, Bengals. I don't know if you're going to win the division again, the way the Ravens are really kind of, and the draft hasn't happened. Who knows what the Ravens are going to do in the draft? So certainly the Ravens are in a good spot. And I wanted to leave this one for close to the end because he's one of my favorite players in the NFL. This wasn't the sexiest signing. It was one of the earliest ones, but it was definitely not the sexiest. Defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi signs with the Chicago Bears for 3 years and $40.5 million. I love Larry Ogunjobi. I think he is criminally underrated, and he has been ever since he got into the NFL. He played for the Cincinnati Bengals last year. Did you know it? Probably not. I think, again, he's criminally underrated. I'm glad he's finally getting a big contract that he deserves. The Bears need some help in that defensive line, especially after trading Khalil Mack. They weren't great against the run last year either. They also released Eddie Goldman. So definitely Larry Ogunjobi was needed over there, and he'll solidify that front for years to come. And I expect really big things from him this year. So yeah. Last move I'm going to talk about, Von Miller. So I did just get an update while I've been sitting here. So the original report for Von Miller, he signed with the Buffalo Bills, of which I'm just so thrilled about. I cannot wait for him to be murdering Mac Jones for the next 6 years. But 6 years, $120 million. They originally reported he was guaranteed $34 million right at signing, but they have just updated that. He is receiving $45 million right at signing, and $51.5 million total guaranteed. So from now until the end of his contract, he is not guaranteed a whole lot of money, which I think is really smart for the Bills. He's obviously getting up there in age. He's been injured over the last couple of years on and off. His production has dropped a little bit. Obviously, as you get older, as I said earlier, you can kind of lose things physically. So I think it's a great investment to pay him a lot of money up front and not really have a lot tied into the cap the next few years. So certainly that's a great thing for them. So now I'd like to kind of mention some guys that, re-signed with their previous teams. I just think that, talking about guys that were on a team and then are still there, it's not nearly as sexy or as fun. So I'm just going to kind of lump them all together. Bengals defensive tackle B.J. Hill, Buccaneers cornerback Carlton Davis, Steelers right tackle Chukwuma Okorafor, Packers linebacker, Devondre Campbell, Dolphins edge rusher Emmanuel Ogbah, Titans edge Harold Landry, Cardinals running back James Conner, Packers linebacker Preston Smith, and Cardinals tight end Zach Ertz. I obviously did not name all of them. Those are just some of the major players to re-sign with their contracts. I do want to talk about some of the guys that were franchise tagged over the last a couple of weeks ago. I seem to have misplaced them here. I don't know where they went. But nonetheless, I will do it off of memory because I have most of them memorized. Wide receiver, Devontae Adams for the Green Bay Packers. Wide receiver, Chris Godwin for the Buccaneers. Blake Jarwin, the tight end for the Cowboys. He was franchise tagged. I also know that David Njoku, the tight end for the Cleveland Browns, was franchise tagged. Correction, Blake Jarwin was released by the Cowboys. He was not franchise tagged. I'm thinking of Mike Gesicki, the tight end for the Miami Dolphins, that was franchise tagged. My apologies. Who else was franchise tagged that I can remember? I don't think I can remember anyone else off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody very important, but right now I simply just cannot think of it. Oh, Jesse Bates, safety for the Cincinnati Bengals, was also franchise tagged. A couple of most of those made sense. Obviously, Devontae Adams, who, by the way, said he is not going to play on the franchise tag. He wants a long-term contract, so we'll see how that develops. But guys like that makes sense. Chris Godwin makes sense. Obviously, guys like that, it makes a perfect sense for them to franchise tag. David Njoku didn't make much sense to me, although now the Cleveland Browns have released tight end Austin Hooper, who was the starter in Cleveland. So I guess they are betting on David Njoku being a little bit better, which I don't really understand why then they signed Austin Hooper, because David Njoku was there already. They clearly didn't believe in him enough to be the starter. They signed Austin Hooper. A year later, they released Austin Hooper, franchise tag David Njoku, and now David Njoku is going to be the starter apparently. You Cleveland, you tell me. I don't know. But nonetheless, a move like that didn't really make much sense to me until that kind of came out. Obviously, the franchise tag stuff happened last week, so it took a while for these things to develop. And then also Mike Gesicki, the tight end for the Dolphins. I wasn't really sure why they did that. Mike Gesicki is a decent player. He only had 2 touchdowns last year, though. He had like 780 receiving yards, which is pretty good, but I'm not sure he's worth top shelf money as a tight end. I'm not sure he was really that worth keeping around. But I understand it, I guess, in a way. If you really felt like you needed to keep him and he wasn't cooperating in terms of contract extensions, maybe franchise tagging him for one more year. But nonetheless, so that's all, if not most, if not all, of the guys that were franchise tagged in the NFL this year. Now, I want to talk about a few guys that have retired since free agency opened up. Bucks guard Ali Marpet has called it a career. Ravens offensive tackle Alejandro Villanueva has called it a career. And Colts tight end Jack Doyle also called it a career. So congrats to them, and absolutely the best of luck in the rest of their lives outside of football. I just realized I did forget. Center Ryan Jensen did return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a 3-year, $39 million contract. I do remember that. I did not mention that earlier. That's one that I did forget to put down. So I'm guessing there are more that I forgot to write down. But again, there were so many of them, I do apologize. But that did happen also. Ryan Jensen re-signed with the Buccaneers. All right. So Another noteworthy story that has been developing over the last few days. So, for those of you who do not know, quarterback Deshaun Watson, if that name sounds familiar, you might know him as a fantastic football player. If it's not for that reason, you might know him because he has been in the legal troubles over the legal troubles. Good. He's been in legal trouble over the last few months, if not the last year or two, because there were many women that came forward and claimed that he sexually assaulted, or whatever the case may be, to over 20 women, ranging from just kind of being inappropriate to full-on sexual assault. All of the claims were vastly different. Again, some, just kind of like, he touched my butt once, and others were like, he forced me into oral sex and stuff, all like that. Just crazy stuff. You guys could go read about it if you haven't heard about it at this point. But nonetheless, Deshaun Watson did finally get to a grand jury, and the grand jury did not press charges, but, they basically acquitted him and said that, they're not going to take the case. They don't feel like there's enough evidence to, put him on trial and possibly indict him for these crimes. So they refused to indict him, which means he is now cleared. As of right now, I assume that there are other legal actions that those women can take should they decide that that's the right thing to do. But as of right now, his case is over, which means he is now able to play football. He's already served his suspension from the commissioner. So at this point, he is capable. He is ready to play football. And what gets lost in all of this certainly is the fact that Deshaun Watson asked for a trade from the Texans right before all this crazy stuff happened. So my guess is he is not going to be playing for the Houston Texans for the rest of his career. He's not going to do that. And for those of you who do not remember, Deshaun Watson, when he is healthy, is a top 5 quarterback in football. He is phenomenal, and he's so young. He's on a long-term contract. It's an expensive one, but it's a long-term contract, so whoever's trading for him, it's not going to be a year of Deshaun Watson, probably, unless something crazy happens, but it's going to be 3, 4, 5 years. However many years is left, I don't know anymore. It's been years since he signed the contract, and obviously with, this legal trouble, he hasn't played. I don't know what's happened at that point to his contract. I don't know if they were still paying him. I don't know if he wasn't paid. I don't know if the years were voided. I don't know what's going on with that. But nonetheless, you're going to get him for a few years. And so, to me, a team like the Carolina Panthers would really be great for them. They really need to figure out that quarterback situation. Sam Darnold is not the answer. So I just think that, that'd be a great team. It would make sense for draft capital, plus maybe a Robbie Anderson, a great young wide receiver like Robbie Anderson. Maybe that would get the deal done. I'm not sure. Maybe Seattle. I could definitely see them with all of the stuff that they just got for Russell Wilson, just jumping right back in and getting Deshaun Watson, figuring out that QB situation right away. I could see that happening, although I feel like that would be a scenario where they'd have to give up a lot of draft picks, like 3 or 4 first-round picks, a couple second-round picks. You'd have to really pay for Deshaun Watson at this point. I've seen Cleveland and Atlanta both in the running. I've seen, he's gone in meetings with them. I've seen the Saints in the running. So, there are certainly plenty of suitors for Deshaun Watson. I don't really think the Falcons have much that they can give up at this point. I mean, they certainly don't have the cap space to keep him, especially if they somehow decide to keep Matt Ryan. And I also don't think that the Texans would want Matt Ryan right now and his $37 million cap hit, which was restructured. It used to be $49 million. Now it's $37. Much better. Not really. It is, but it's still terrible. But I don't think they have a lot to give up for him, and they obviously don't have the cap room to have him, unless they get rid of a bunch of really good high-paid players, which I don't think the Texans would want. And then obviously, I just don't think the Browns are a fit to me. Baker Mayfield may or may not be the answer, but what are you giving up for him? I mean, your team is pretty good as is, but you don't have a lot on offense to give up. You don't really have a lot of pieces you can give up on defense that aren't veterans. And so I don't know how much the Texans are going to want anybody on your team, honestly. You don't have Unless you're going to trade David Njoku. Like, you don't have a great young weapon that you can give them. You don't have great young offensive linemen anymore. You have one, Jedrick Mill, or I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but their left tackle, whoever his name is. I'm sorry, it's been a very long day. But you have him, but why would you give him up? That's crazy. But nonetheless, I just don't think the Browns are a fit. But I would love to see Deshaun Watson in Atlanta. I think it'd be fun, and I also would love to see him in really any of the places that they've mentioned. The Saints would be fun. Seattle would be fun. The Falcons would be fun. The Browns would be fun. I mean, that'd be great. City of Cleveland finally getting, other than Baker Mayfield the last couple of years, a really, really awesome quarterback. So, anyways, I will as always keep you guys updated just to how that situation plays out. And the last football-related topic for this video is going to be me breaking down the moves that the Patriots have made this free agency. And spoiler alert, I'm not going to have fun doing it. I was not a big fan. So first we have the Patriots. They placed a second-round tender on Jacoby Myers, which means he will be back for one more year, and he will be playing under just slightly under $4 million price this year. Good to have him back. He was our best receiver last year, as crazy as that sounds. Jacoby Myers is good, don't get me wrong, but he should never be in a position to be a number one wide receiver in the NFL. He's probably the worst number one wide receiver in the NFL right now. And again, not his fault. He's a good player, but he should not be a number one receiver. He just shouldn't. The Patriots need to get somebody like an Allen Robinson, like a Julio Jones, who just got released today. Crazy stuff, by the way. The Julio Jones just gets released. Like, that's just wild. But nonetheless, good to have him back. Patriots, they re-signed safety Devin McCourty to a 1-year, $9 million contract. Listen, I got to be honest. First of all, I love Devin McCourty. I have his whole career. He's one of the best first-round picks the Patriots have ever had. Out of Rutgers, nobody thought all that much of him. They drafted him as a corner, didn't really make it as a corner, moved him to safety, and it was the perfect. It was like a hand in a glove. I mean, he was just perfect out there for Bill Belichick. He was a great leader. He knows this system inside and out. He's a great leader for the young guys. All that's great, but I watched that game in Buffalo. I watched that game in Buffalo in the playoffs, and the Patriots defense looked old, slow, and tired. They did. And Devin McCourty is going into his 13th or 14th year, whatever it is now, in the NFL, all for the Patriots. He is up there in age. The Patriots already have Kyle Duggar. They already have Miles Bryant. They already have Adrian Phillips. You don't need Devin McCourty right now. I mean, I understand that's not a popular thing to say as a Patriots fan, but what the Patriots need right now is younger and faster guys that are going to be able to keep up with the weapons that the Chiefs have, with the weapons that the Bills have, with the weapons that the Broncos have, with the weapons that the Chargers have, with the weapons that the Colts even have, and a Michael Pittman, like the weapons that the Jaguars are going to have. I mean, they're probably still going to be a playoff team, but you've got all these teams in the AFC with the Bengals, that have one of the best offenses in the league. You've got to be able to keep up with those guys. It's just a fact. If you want to make the playoffs, if you want to compete in the playoffs, if you want to compete for a Super Bowl, that's what you have to do. And I'm sorry, but Devin McCourty, Dante Hightower, Jawan Bentley, Jamie Collins, they were great. Jawan Bentley's still decently young, but he just didn't get the job done. Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty, Jamie Collins, they're old. They're not in their primes. They've lost a little bit of speed. It's just a fact, guys. It's just a fact. I'm sorry, but you needed to move on, I think, this year. Now, again, I know it's not popular to say. I know that Devin McCourty is a huge part of the culture in New England. But we didn't need culture. Culture did not win the Super Bowl last year. If anything, culture lost that playoff game because no amount of culture can make you run faster. That's just a fact. Again, I'm sure there's plenty of Patriots fans that are going to disagree. All good. You're very entitled to that opinion. All good, I understand. I love Devin McCourty. My heart hates what I'm saying right now. I love Devin McCourty. I've always been that person that says if a guy has been great for you, you should keep him no matter what and let him retire there. I've always been that guy. But that game scarred me, man. It really did. It really, really did. But anyway, I'm gonna move on because I think I've said enough. He's 34 years old. They didn't have a lot of cap space to begin with. They used almost all of it on Devin McCourty. I don't know. Anyway, next up, the Patriots re-signed special team guru Matthew Slater to a fully guaranteed contract worth $2.62 million. Fine move. He's one of the best special teamers in the league still. He's been around for quite a while. Good. Keep him around. Makes sense. Next up, the Patriots re-signed running back James White to a 2-year, $5 million contract. I was actually a little surprised with this. I figured he was probably... I thought that he might leave last year. But obviously, he didn't play this year because he was injured the entire season. So I think probably he felt the Patriots are going to be the only place that really wanted him. I do think the Raiders were interested at one point. But, the Patriots wanted him back. So, he stuck around, which is great. He's a great weapon that Mac Jones didn't get to use last year. He really catches the ball well out of the backfield. And obviously, him with Ramondre Stevenson and with Damian Harris back there, it's going to be a great running back trio that all do different things well. So certainly great, but honestly, it's not enough. They need more on offense. As I've kind of mentioned earlier, they need some guys that, can be a number one wide receiver. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I just feel like that they think the status quo is fine, which it's not. But nonetheless, they need more. Now for some trades that the Patriots made. The Patriots traded linebacker Chase Winovich to the Cleveland Browns for linebacker Mac Wilson. And as far as I know, there were no other parts to this trade. It was literally just basically a player swap. Who won this trade? I think it just depends. I love Chase Winovich, so I think that the Browns won this trade because I think he's still a little bit of a better player than Mac Wilson. But, the Browns needed a pass rusher, and the Patriots needed an inside linebacker. So they swapped guys that weren't really going to get much playing time, apparently, even though I think Chase Winovich really could have helped that pass rush this year. Nonetheless, it was kind of just, again, a swap of needs there. You can think whatever you want about that. Again, I still think Winovich is a little bit better than Wilson, but, it is what it is. The Patriots also traded guard Shaq Mason to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a 5th-round pick. I don't really get this one. I don't know if I'm alone in that in terms of my Patriot fandom. Like, am I the only one who didn't understand that trade? Because here's what's happened this free agency. So, Trent Brown is a free agent. You're starting right tackle. You don't have the money to sign him. He's gone. Unless he's coming back for $2 million. He's gone. You lost Ted Karras, who was your starting, starting guard or starting center last year, whatever the case may be. He was one of your starting interior linemen. He's gone. He signed with the Bengals. Thank goodness. Somebody signed with the Bengals, but he signed with the Bengals. He's gone. So that's 2 starting offensive linemen already gone. Now, Isaiah Wynn is playing on his last year of his contract, and he did not get his 5th-year option picked up. Or no, this is his 5th-year option, I think, actually. But nonetheless, who knows if I think he's going to really overprice himself for the Patriots to come back, similar to what Nate Solder did. He's going to be priced way higher than what he's worth. And the Patriots just probably aren't going to bring him back, to be honest. So that means that after this season, you now have 3 offensive linemen that have started for you gone. For a rookie quarterback, that is bad. And then now you trade your other guard for a 5th-round pick who had not just one more year of team control, which if he was under control for one more year and he wasn't going to re-sign, all right, I understand. You didn't think he was going to re-sign. You couldn't afford him, whatever, trade him. I still wouldn't like it all that much, but I would get it. But he's under team control for 2 more years. He's got this year at $6.5 million and next year at $7.5 million. He's under control for 2 more years. And that's a great contract for a guy that's as good as Shaq Mason. So now you've lost 3 starting offensive linemen just this year. You're losing another one next year. What are you going to do? An offensive line. Why? I don't understand why you would trade Shaq Mason now. And the package, it's a 5th round pick. That's not enough for me to say, you know what? That's worth way more than what Shaq Mason gives me now. Does anybody really think that a 5th round pick is more valuable than what Shaq Mason gives you right now? For 2 more years? I don't get it. Like, that's it? It wasn't for like a 2nd or a 3rd round pick? I mean, for the Bucs, that's huge. I mean, they've lost a lot of, they lost Alex Kappa. They lost, I just talked about him retiring, and now I'm completely blanking on who it is. Ali Marpet? Goodness. There you go. So they lost both their starting guards. So getting Shaq Mason in there, a guy who also has played with Tom Brady before, which I'll get into in just a second, actually, because I just remembered I did not talk about Tom Brady, and I must. He's played with Tom Brady before. Getting him in there, that's a cute, and only to give up a 5th round pick. What a trade for them. That's huge. So, anyway, they re-signed their kicker, Nick Folk. Cool. They re-signed their backup quarterback, Brian Hoyer. Cool. I got to be honest, I don't like where the offense, yeah, but the off season, I meant to say, is going so far. With the absolutely dreadful drafting that the Patriots have had over the last half decade, maybe even half a dozen years, I don't really trust the front office to recreate the talent that they just lost. I believe I read somewhere that if Isaiah Wynn does not re-sign, that will make 12 straight 1st and 2nd round picks that the Patriots have had that did not earn a second contract in New England. 12. That is 6 full years of 1st and 2nd round picks that none of them have been re-signed by the Patriots because they were that good. None of them. And, you could say, well, Bill Belichick doesn't like to overpay for his own players, and you're right, he doesn't. But that's also a testament to just how awful they have drafted. Now, this past year, they drafted quite well in the 1st and 2nd rounds. Kyle Duggar, from 2 years ago, is a very good safety. Who knows if he'll break that trend? Mac Jones, obviously, your 1st-round quarterback. Who knows if he breaks that trend? Obviously, Christian Barmore, a fantastic a young player in the 2nd round. Who knows if he breaks that trend? But as of right now, it's not looking good. It's not looking good. That would make 12 straight people if Isaiah Wynn did not re-sign. It doesn't make me feel like this year they're going to take guys that are going to be surefire, studs for them. And, now, you got Mac Wilson, and I am a huge fan of Cam McGrone out of Michigan, so I think that you might have your 2 starting inside linebackers. What do you do at pass rusher? What do you do at outside linebacker? What do you do in terms of your captain on defense? You got Devin McCourty. Bentley's gone. He was calling the plays. Dante Hightower, he was calling the plays too. At times. What do? You can't draft 13 linebackers in the draft. You just and honestly, I don't think you can trust Josh Uche, and you can't trust Anthony Jennings. Your 2nd round picks from a couple of years ago, you just can't. You just can't. I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. Could they make a couple of huge trades for like a La'el Collins from the Cowboys, who's looking for a trade right now? Could they trade for a Tyler Lockett from Seattle if he's not happy, if they don't end up getting a quarterback out there? Probably not, but maybe. I guess I can hold out hope. I don't know. I don't know where this offseason's going. Last thing I'll talk about, Tom Brady. I've said a lot of really nice things about Tom Brady, and I meant every single one of them. He's been a huge part of my life. He's been a huge inspiration to me. He retired about 45 days ago, and he is now unretired. So, yeah. That didn't last long. I'm a little upset because I said so many nice things about Tom Brady and so many amazing things, and now he's still playing. I've just wasted it all. And if I said it again when he actually retires, it's not going to mean as much. I tweeted about it and everything. That's, and so that makes me upset. But at the same time, Tom Brady's back. That's cool. Buccaneers, they probably are sitting there going, oh, thank you, because I don't know how they would have figured out that. They would have probably gone into a deep, dark pit for the next few years. Excuse me. They really capped themselves out. They spent so much money on all these guys to keep them around for the next couple of years to maximize that window with Tom Brady, and then he just goes out of nowhere. What was probably going to happen was they were probably going to keep all the guys this year, and then everyone was going to walk out the door. Everyone was gone without Tom Brady. And now they're probably all going to stay. Who knows what Ryan Jensen would have done? Ryan Jensen announced that he was coming back to the Bucs like a couple hours after Tom Brady unretired, excuse me. Maybe he was going to leave. And then they would have really been screwed. They wouldn't have had any offensive line. They would have had their left tackle, who's, again, I don't know why I'm completely blanking on all the left tackles today. I just keep thinking Mekhi Becton, and that is not him because he plays for the Jets. I don't know why he's the only name that's popping into my mind right now. But Tristan Wirfs. There we go. I know players. Something's wrong with me. No. But he would have been the only one left. Literally all four of their other offensive linemen would have left in free agency. Gone. Bye. We'll be seeing you. So, they're probably just, thinking they're lucky stars that Tom Brady's back. But yeah, crazy. He's unretired. He'll play for at least one more year. We'll see how it goes. Hey guys, it's me again. I just finished recording not 2 or 3 minutes ago, and I just got a notification that the Patriots just signed Terrence Mitchell, former defensive back out of Houston. So he played for Houston. Moderately decent signing. Certainly we need some help in the secondary. I don't know the details of the contract right now. I just got the tweet from the Patriots Twitter account. It happened about a couple hours ago, I suppose. I must have missed it. But I did want to put that in there in case anybody gets to be a stickler about that kind of thing. So I will add this on somewhere in the middle of the podcast, apparently. So, yeah. So, all right. So, last thing I want to talk about, not football related. So, we're all done with the football stuff as of right now, but I will check just to make sure there has been no other moves over the last couple of hours. Von Miller. Nope. I don't believe there are any that I see. So, yeah, we're going to move on, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about the Celtics, because I have not had a chance to talk about them in a couple of weeks, but man, they look fantastic, don't they? It's just been awesome, since the beginning of the year, or the year by that, I mean the calendar year, so the beginning, January of 2022, they have had the best defense in the NBA and the fourth best offense in the NBA, which means that their net rating as a team is through the roof. It is by far the best in the league over that span. So just about 3.5 months now. They haven't been, or 2.5 months, whatever that math is. It's been a while. They are appearing to be the best team, or one of the best teams on paper in the league over that span. But the most important thing to me as a Celtics fan is just that it's fun again. Watching the Celtics is fun again. And listen, all right, there are a lot of unreasonable sports fans out there, and I like to think I'm not one of them. Obviously, that's up for debate. But I think that, a lot of fans, especially of, certain teams, they think that they are going to be the best in the league and win the championship every year, no matter what. I know a lot of Red Sox fans that are like that. There are Celtics fans that are like that. I know a lot of Patriots fans that are like that, although mostly for good reason over the last 20 years. But, even like last year, people were like, we're still going to win the No, you're not. No, you're not. I know a lot of Yankees fans that are like that. You know who you are. Stop denying it. But as someone who looks at sports from a much more analytical perspective and genuinely is a fan of players just as much as he is his specific team, like I just love watching good basketball or good football or good baseball, regardless of who's playing. Like, I really want to see the Blue Jays play this year because their team just looks absolutely stacked. And I'll get more into that in tomorrow's video, but nonetheless, as somebody who feels that he is just as big of a fan of players as he is a team, I feel like I have more realistic expectations of my team coming into the year because I know a lot more about individual players than I think somebody who's just a fan of their team would. I think I have more realistic expectations than most other people. And I can say that confidently because I have been around a lot of sports fans that just don't have realistic expectations. Now, I certainly know plenty that do, but there are also plenty that don't. And I think, am I saying that the Celtics are a championship contender this year? And do I think that they're going to win the championship this year? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that I definitely think the Celtics are going to win the championship this year. I think what they have proven, though, is that they are mildly at least contenders. They have proven that when they play at their full capability, when they are fully healthy, when they do have, time to be together as a full unit, and if they do play up to their full potential, they have the capability to play at the level of some of the best teams in the NBA, like the Milwaukee Bucks, like the Miami Heat, like the Memphis Grizzlies, who they ran out of Boston the other day, like the Brooklyn Nets with KD and Kyrie. They have the capability of at least getting that level, like the Dallas Mavericks. They lost that game, but it was a fantastic game. And the Celtics have the best defense in the league since the beginning of the year. The Mavericks have the second best defense in the league since the beginning of the year. So two great defensive teams, a great defensive battle. So, like a team like that too, that's a contender as well. So, you see the Celtics really showing that they can compete at a really, really high level. But here's the difference, I think, between me and just somebody who has unrealistic expectations, is they had to show me that they could do that. I think a lot of Celtics fans coming into the year still were like, yes, they're going to be contenders in the East because they're always contenders in the East. And I looked at it and I was like, I think they might be the 8 seed. I don't think they're going to compete. I think they're going to get the 8 seed. They're going to get bounced in the playoffs by the Bucks or the 76ers or the Nets, somebody. Like they're going to get trounced in the playoffs like they did last year, and that's going to be that. Like that's what I thought at the beginning of the year because they didn't do anything in the offseason to make me think otherwise. They added some nice pieces. They got a little bit more talent around them, but they just didn't show me anything. And then obviously at the beginning of the year, the first couple of months, it was brutal. I mean, they played terrible. They did not at all play what they were capable of. And, I could see the vision that Brad Stevens had and that Ime Udoka had, but I felt like this year was more of like a throwaway year or a placeholder year. That's probably a placeholder year where you're not going to compete for a championship this year, but if we get the foundation right, we might be able to compete next year or 2 years from now. That's kind of what I thought this year was going to be. But now, Ime Udoka has these guys completely buying in to the defensive-minded basketball that they need to play. Good defense creates good offense. Like, that is the mindset right now. And Jason Tatum is playing absolutely out of his mind. Most of the core of the team is locked up the next few years. Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Al Horford's only there for, maybe next year, but still, even Derek White, who's going to be there for a few years. Daniel Tice is going to be there for a few years. or at least under contract. They might not be there for a few years, but those guys are all under contract, for the next handful of years. So most of your core of this team is still intact, which is amazing, an amazing thing to have. So the Celtics they're just fun to watch again. And, for me, that's the most important thing is just, even if they're not good, even if the Celtics aren't championship contenders, I want to have fun watching them play. And earlier this year, I was not having fun watching them play. It was pulling teeth watching them play because it frustrated me to no end watching them play sometimes. And, even when the Celtics were really, really bad a few years ago, back in the Avery Bradley, Jeff Green, Jay Crowder days, where Tyler Zeller was our starting center, Kelly Olynyk was our backup center, like, back in those days, before we even had Isaiah Thomas, like, back in those days. And then the first year that we had Isaiah Thomas, and he wasn't starting, and he wasn't all that impactful. He scored a little bit, but he wasn't all that impactful. Like, back in those years, it was still so fun for me to watch because you could see the effort and the energy that Jonas Jerebko had every time he hit a three. Like, Jonas Jerebko was playing like 25 minutes a night. Like, they were not good. They were not good, but it was still so much fun for me to watch because you could just see the energy, the effort, the heart, the hustle, all that stuff. They were buying into what Brad Stevens was telling them. They were buying into that system. You could see the foundation. You could see the light at the end of the tunnel with all the draft picks that they had upcoming. But guess what? This year, that's not what's happening. That was not what was happening. The Celtics, watching them was horrible because you knew that they were better than they were playing, and you never knew what Celtics you were going to get. And now it is so different. And I think it's a reasonable thing to say that the Celtics, both in present and in future, are looking like they are going to be a team you do not want to mess with over the next couple of years. If they can play like this over the next couple of years, they're going to be dangerous. Now, will I be upset if the Celtics don't win the championship this year? It's a good question. I don't know. I think it depends on how close they get. I didn't think the Celtics were going to win the championship 2 or 3 years, during the COVID year, but then they got to the Eastern Conference Finals and they were going up against the Heat, who I thought we had a really good chance of beating. And then I thought that we could have maybe beaten the Lakers. I don't know if we could have, but maybe. We could have beaten the Lakers. But when we lost to the Heat, I was very ticked off because I thought that they blew a chance to really do something amazing. And, so I was upset. If something like that happens this year, like if we make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and we play the Cleveland Cavaliers and we lose, I'll be like, dude, really? The Cavs without Colin Sexton? Just Lauri Markkanen raining 40 points a night on you? Darius Garland raining 40 points a night on you? Like, Kevin Love coming off the bench and guarding Jason Tatum and locking him down? Like, what? Like, yeah, I'd be ticked if that happened. No offense, Cleveland. You guys have a really good team this year. I love what you guys are doing over there, but you're not ready to compete right now. Sorry. Like, if something like that happened, yeah, I'd be ticked. But, if we got to round 2, faced the Bucks, lost in 6, whatever the case may be, or, the Brooklyn Nets just went on an absolute tear. Ben Simmons came back and was a lockdown defender, and KD's dropping 50 a night, and now apparently Kyrie dropping 60 when he plays. If they're playing like that, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I might not be upset if that happens. But nonetheless, if they get really close and they blow it, I'll probably be upset. But otherwise, no, probably not. But again, it really just depends on how close they get. But either way, Celtics are so much fun to watch this year. They're in a really great place now. And I genuinely just cannot wait to see how the rest of the year shakes out. But that is going to be it for me. Today was a long one. It's about the length of a normal podcast. I don't know how long tomorrow's going to be. If I didn't mention it before, I'm not sure if I mentioned the specifics of what I'm going to do tomorrow. But tomorrow is going to be all about MLB Free Agency from November or October, November, whenever day it started. November all the way up until now. I'm going to talk about all the free agency moves, the trades. The signings, the re-signings, everything that I can find. I am going to talk about all of that on Friday. So that's going to come out on Friday. I don't know when it's going to come out on Friday. It's probably going to come out Friday night because I'm also recording it on Friday, which means I have to record it and edit it and then put it out for you guys, and sometimes that takes quite a while, especially for longer videos like this. So it might be pretty late Friday night, so you might not be able to watch it until Saturday. I'm not sure, but I'm going to try my best to get it out Friday night for you guys, hopefully around 8 p.m. I don't know if it's going to work out that way, but I'm going to try really hard. So if it doesn't happen, I'm sorry. I did my best. But nonetheless, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I need it this week, all right? It is a long week, a lot of recording, a lot of research, a lot of script writing, a lot of everything. So, I just appreciate you guys so much for allowing me to do this. I'm having such a blast. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, me again. I just want to say thank you so much for checking out the Lopes Goes Last podcast. It means the world to me that you decided to stick all the way to the end. That's super cool. So thank you again. And if you really, really like what you see, I'd love for you to subscribe, like the video, and share it with all your family and friends because, this is my passion project. This is what I love to do, and I really want the sucker to grow. And the only way that can happen is through you guys, is if you guys can help me out. So again, if you like what you saw, please subscribe, like the video, share with all your friends and family. That's the only way this is going to grow. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.